A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
Does Orthodox Judaism recognize one Halakhic system or multiple Halakhic systems?
There can be no doubt that we have today on the ground many Halakhic systems working in tandem. Different communities, different parts of the Jewish people, factually speaking, operate according to different Halakhic systems. For example, for many centuries now, the Sfaradim particularly accepted the Kabbalah, and not just the Kabbalah as a theosophic system, but also the claims of different Sfaradi authors who were themselves Mekubalim and influenced by the Kabbalah. The claims of such authors that according to the Kabbalah, when it comes to Halakha, according to Halachic practice, one has to behave according to the Halakha. When it comes to Halachic practice, one has to behave in a certain manner, or that this opinion is to be followed rather than that opinion, based on some Kabbalistic rationale. This approach to Halachic practice and Halachic decision-making developed in an evolutionary process in the Sfaradi world particularly, over a period of centuries, in fact, to the point that for many generations now, and this is certainly the case today, all Sfaradim, almost without exception, follow Halachic systems that are heavily rooted in and heavily based on Kabbalistic claims and understandings which pertain to the Halakha. On the other hand, in the Ashkenazi world, there is little to be found in the way of clear, unadulterated Kabbalistic interpretations and Halachic positions that are accepted in the Ashkenazi world and acted upon. There are certain examples. One might be the fact that many Ashkenazim today, although not all, many do not wear tefillin on Chol HaMoed, which is an opinion essentially rooted in a Kabbalistic interpretation or understanding of that matter, whereas still to this day many Ashkenazim do wear tefillin on Chol HaMoed, which was the ancient practice, both of Ashkenazim and one might add of all of Am Yisrael, more or less, at least according to the sources. But the fact is, in general, Ashkenazim do not follow an Halachic system which is heavily invested in Kabbalah or in taking into account Kabbalistic perspectives and claims or interpretations when they have some impact on the Halachic process or Halachic practice. Now, what is it that leads to these two different Halachic systems, the Ashkenazi Halachic system and the Sfaradi Halachic system? We are talking about two different perceptions or philosophies or ideologies, if you like. That is to say, in the Sfaradi world, the acceptance of the Zohar and the Kabbalah of the Ari and all the huge literature based on those works, which developed over a period of centuries, which often expressed opinions and views with Halachic ramifications. That whole approach to Judaism was accepted almost without exception, without any argument, or any arguments or any differing opinions were silenced, and therefore the Sfaradi Halachic system that we see today is entirely rooted in these Kabbalistic perspectives and interpretations. That Sfaradi approach is a philosophical and ideological approach and understanding and interpretation of Judaism, which has had a very great impact on Halakha in the Sfaradi world. In the Ashkenazi world, where the acceptance of Kabbalah and the Zohar and the Kabbalah of the Ari, etc., and the many authors who wrote on that basis and expressed different Halakhic opinions and views, that whole literature is by and large ignored, certainly by the vast majority of Ashkenazim, even those Ashkenazim, one might add, who do study Kabbalah. And that is because of a different approach and a different philosophy, a different ideology regarding the place of Kabbalah in Judaism, and to what extent, if any, it should have an impact on the Halakhic process. So here, right there, we have two clear systems, Halakhic systems, very different on a huge number of details and issues, also on very general, larger questions, such as the question which is often discussed: if it seems that the Talmud says A and the Zohar, for example, says B, which book are we to follow? Generally speaking, in the Ashkenazi world, the answer is A, the Talmud, and generally speaking, in the Sephardi world, the answer is B, the Zohar. Again, these different approaches are rooted in different ideologies, different understandings of Judaism. Essentially, we're talking about hashkafot olam. Hashkafa is a general overview and understanding of Judaism and how it should work.
Are there other halachic systems that might be mentioned here?
Most definitely. I think that the halachic system of Rambam is qualitatively different from many, if not most, of the Posukim. And I don't mean here to discuss details, different positions on this or that detail of halakha. I'm talking about an overall approach. There is a fundamental reason why, as opposed to the practice of most of the Halakhic decisors and authors who wrote books on halakha 1,000 years ago and before that time, and in medieval times, there is a reason why those authors wrote books of halakha that covered only those areas of Jewish practice and halakha that were relevant and were actually kept on the ground in a state, in the reality of galuth, in the reality of exile. This is what the Posukim refer to as Hazman Hazeh, this period of time, by which they mean the period of the galuth, what I refer to sometimes as GMJ, Galut Mode Judaism. That reality of books written which present the halakha to the Jew, to the person learning that book, as being a system which relates only to the reality of galuth, of exile, that is one approach to understanding halakha, to writing about halakha, presenting the Torah and the halakha to the average Jew. The Rambam was not capable of writing such a book. I don't mean to say he wasn't capable in the sense that he couldn't have done so if he wanted to, but he couldn't bring himself to write such a book. He didn't want to bring himself to write such a book, because he felt that for a proper understanding of the Torah, one has to see the entire picture, the big picture. One has to understand the relationship, and there is a relationship between Hilchot Shabbat on the one hand and Hilchot Melachim and Milhamot on the other hand, laws and halachic practices and essential rules of thumb which pertain to how to keep Shabbat, which is something which exists in the Galuth, and how to run a Jewish state, or in which way a Jewish state should be organized, and what are some of the principles upon which such a Jewish state should be based. According to the Rambam, all this has to be written in the same work which covers all aspects of the Torah She'Ba'al Peh, of the oral tradition, in order that a person get a full, complete and balanced picture of what Judaism is about. This is why Rambam, when writing about how to conduct Leil HaSeder, for example, on Pesach, he describes the order of actions and things that we do at the Seder table. And then he says, at this point in the Seder, you take a piece of meat from the Korban Haqiqah, the Korban Haqiqah, and you say this bracha, Le'echol et HaZevach, and then you eat from that Korban. And then you say later a bracha on the Korban Pesach, and you do the same thing. And then he goes on to say, if if you are living at a time when there is no mikdash and therefore no korban, then you don't do that, you do something else. But first, the Rambam gives you the lechatchila, the normative order of things, not the GMJ, the Galut mode Judaism version of a Seder, but first if you want, the Geulah mode version, which is also GMJ, and therefore perhaps we should use the term RMJ, Redemption Mode Judaism, version of the Seder. There he gives you first how it should be done when there is a Korban, when there is a Mikdash, as things should be, and then he, as an afterthought or as a second option, when there is a reality of Galuth and no Korban, he tells you how to conduct yourself in that reality as well. By so doing, the Rambam ensures that you cannot learn Hilchot Pesach, you cannot learn the halachot about running a Seder without knowing how things should be, and therefore understanding that at the present time things are not as they should be. But if you learn the same halachot in the Torah or the Shulchan Aruch or any other number of Halakhic works, you will not run into these facts at all. And then you begin to understand. It's quite natural for a person to understand, therefore, that what I'm reading here, that is Judaism, that is the entire picture, and therefore you can become quite oblivious of the normative form of Torah Judaism, and you can easily find yourself in the position of thinking that Galut mode Judaism is the real Makoil. That's the real Makoil. That's all there is to discuss, and that's all there is to know, or that you need to know. The Rambam does not think so for one moment. The Rambam thinks that every Jew has to know and see the full, complete picture, get an overview of Judaism, and then work down to the details, and never be allowed to forget that there is the Geulah mode of Judaism to which we aspire, and the Galuth mode of Judaism is something that we have to endure, but it is not the yardstick and is not the real McCoy. This the Rambam achieves by writing his book Mishneh Torah in that fashion, which encompasses all areas of Judaism, and by writing things always according to the normative version first and the Galut version second. This is also the reason why Rambam very rarely speaks about Minhagim, about customs. He spends very little time discussing different customs in different parts of the Jewish world. Certainly as compared to many other Halachic works, such as the Torah, who always tells you that in Ashkenaz, in Germany, in France, etc., this is how the Jews act in this regard. And when it comes to Spain and other countries with which he was familiar, he mentions their customs as well. In the view of many poskim, the discussion of Minhagim was very important because it led to a certain strengthening of the community, and it gave a certain structure and framework to the Judaism in each different part of the world. The Rambam, on the other hand, discusses these things very little. In fact, a bare minimum. One sees clearly the Rambam did not want to spend much time on these discussions, and to me it is clear why. Because Rambam knew that Galut mode Judaism, the Judaism as things work and as things develop in the Galut, in the different communities, is a temporary phenomenon. Eventually the Jews will return to Eretz Yisrael, as Rambam writes in Hilchot Melachim u'Milhamot Perek Yud Aleph. The Jews will return to Eretz Yisrael, and there they will have to address this question of how to reconstitute a Jewish nation rather than continuing to act as different separate communities that have somehow, almost by accident, found themselves together in the same place in Eretz Yisrael at this particular time. So the Rambam thought, why discuss something which eventually will have to be forgotten and dropped and changed? Therefore, what is, as things are in certain communities today, so they shall be for now, and when things change and when the Jews return to Eretz Yisrael en masse, things will necessarily have to be renewed and looked at anew, and things will have to be addressed, and changes will have to be made. And therefore, Minhagim are a passing phenomenon. This too is an important concept, an important underpinning of Rambam's Halakhic perspective. And this, I believe, is why Rav Kook writes in a letter to his brother, which is to be found in Groth HaRaya, letter number Kof Nun He 155, he writes as follows. כמדומה שראוי להתרגל הרבה בחזרת הרמב"ם כסדר, פרק או פרקים בכל יום. Here Rav Kook writes to his brother, he recommends studying the Mishneh Torah of Rambam every day, one or more chapters per day. He speaks about the importance of Hazara Hekefith, that is to say, covering all of the Rambam. And then he goes on to say, Kimdome she'atid sefer hayad, that is to say, the Mishneh Torah of the Rambam. Seems to me that this book of the Rambam, in the future, atid lihiyot ha'ma'ayan ha'merkazi l'tamidei chachamim. This will become one of the central, or the central work or focus of Talmidei Chachamim in the future. Al pi sidrei halimud shebehechreach yehudshu, according to different forms and different systems of studying Torah that will, without a doubt, and there will be no escape and no option but to change and renew and re-examine the way Torah is studied. So says Rav Kook in Igroth Haraya, page, I'm sorry, it's not Igeret Kof Nun He, it's page Kof Nun He. What Rav Kook does not explain there is what exactly is the hechreah, what is this need that will in the future be felt and understood to renew and to readjust and re-examine the way Torah is studied. To me it is clear that Rav Kook envisioned the situation in which we find ourselves today. That letter that I just quoted of Rav Kook was written in Tafrei Samech Het, that is to say 1908, which is well over 100 years ago now. Rav Kook envisioned a time when increasingly the Jewish people would find themselves in Eretz Yisrael in increasing numbers, Jews from all parts of the world, and with different customs, etc., and different Halakhic systems. And such a reality is not conducive, to put it mildly, to recreating, reconstituting a Jewish nation. In order to do so, to change the reality of Jewish communities into one of a Jewish nation, a different Halakhic system is required, a system which sets aside the customs as they existed in the Galuth, in the different communities, and wishes to redefine Judaism based on the necessity and the approach that we are here in Eretz Yisrael because this is Hashem's will, this is where we belong, and here we are to become a Mamlechet Kohanim and a Goy Kadosh, and that requires a different halachic approach, because every halachic system is an expression of a particular viewpoint or understanding of Judaism based on the needs and the requirements of the time and the place, and therefore the halachic system that was viable and correct and positive in Galuth cannot continue to be the same halachic system without change, without re-examination when the Jewish people return to Eretz Yisrael. And therefore there is a need, and there must be this re-examination and redefining of the halachic system which will allow the Jewish people to fulfill their destiny.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.